You are listening to the Education Instigator podcast with Daneé and Jay. Time to disrupt the status quo and ignite a fire for educational equity.
All right, our wonderful viewers and listeners, this is Education Instigators coming back at you again, talking about some things that really are affecting education. And, we just want to get it off our chest. It's Daneé and Jay.
So, in light of recent events in politics, we absolutely wanted to talk a bit about what is going on nationwide, but even in our own state of Ohio. And so we have been invited to see the state capitol. We were invited to the governor's mansion. Most recently, we were invited to the State address. And it is very interesting to see as of, was that today?
Was it today or yesterday? I think
it was today or yesterday that our governor signed off on Senate Bill 1, which is nixing the use of DEI. And what I think is important for us to say is diversity, equity, and inclusion at higher ed. And so this is just something that is very personal to both of us. And so it was a topic that we thought would be pretty timely and important for us to discuss. And so, Jay, you start us off. What are your thoughts?
I'm a little bit upset. I feel like we're just going backwards, honestly. When it comes to education, we hear the complaints, and I know it's a small minority of Black Americans in America, obviously. That sounded kind of
but we are the global majority. People of color are
sure, most definitely. I'm just speaking
about that.
So when we come, but the reason I brought it about America is because we continue to make it as if everything was for African Americans, right? This DEI conversation, they pretend that this was all about African Americans, but it was so many other reasons why they implemented this. For one, I'm an HBCU grad, Livingstone College graduate, not 2003, December.
Go ahead.
And being a graduate, I got a son that's a graduate. My wife is a graduate, and plenty of my friends, my sister, I have a very strong HBCU support. From Hampton, Central State University. You can name those people in my family that have gone to HBCUs. And I was one that grew up having to learn our history. Like my father made me read about Jim Crow, all of those different things. And to pretend that even if let's say this was just for about African Americans, right? Say that's all it was about. To pretend there was not a need for it is asinine. There's a reason I have an HBCU shirt on, correct? The reason there was a need for historically Black colleges and universities is because we could not go to these white institutes, So these things didn't just come about just because. Let's just build an HBCU.
It was like, we want to have our own stuff. It was
and the saddest thing about this, when you look at the history of education, the only reason y'all white people, unfortunately, start letting Black and brown people into your schools was athletics. If you look at when they start integrating colleges, was during football. You got Michigan State. Those are some of the schools that started this whole trend. You had coaches that said, I will never have a Black player play on my team. And that thought process still is in this world today. I'm not talking about thousands of years. That's the thing I hate when we converse about all of these things that has happened to African Americans, right? When it comes to any other minority group, we're very, very empathetic. If we talk about the Jews and we talk about Holocaust, they deserve their chance. We talk about all of these other areas. It's kind of like, y'all got to get over it, though, African Americans. Y'all ain't the only ones, and it's like, cool. I'm going to let Daneé before I go.
The whole never forget thing, and it doesn't apply. It doesn't apply to us. I definitely agree with you. And what I think is most outstanding about the HBCU model, the whole concept behind historically Black colleges and universities, is yes, what you said, that it was built out of necessity. But on top of that, in their mission statements or whatever you might call them, they explicitly say that it is not excluding anyone on the basis
Right.
of race. Like
Yeah.
HBCUs were a place where Black people could go and be safe, but it always has been very open and welcoming to all people. And
Yeah.
you absolutely see that in just Black culture in general. We are very open and
Yeah.
very what's the word I'm looking for? Comforting, welcoming
Mhm.
group, a very welcoming culture. And no matter what society tries to portray and stereotypes, that's not who we are. And so, yes, what you said about DEI not only impacting Black people is super important, but I do feel like the subtext here is that it is Black people. It's what is that word? Dog whistles.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
the whole, we just keep changing the phrasing. We can't
Yeah.
say this anymore, so we have to say it this way. I saw a post today that was really interesting because it said, make people say what DEI stands for.
Yeah.
Because then you have to sit in how stupid you sound. You have to
Mhm.
sit in the fact that you are saying, oh no, not that I'm against DEI. No, you have to say you are against diversity. And my
Equity.
goodness, that is super alarming for Christians because the Bible is all about diversity. Like
Yeah.
this is biblical, Christians. Sorry to break it to you. Equity. The Bible is all about equity,
Yeah.
inclusion, all about it. That's what Jesus's whole thing. Like, give Jesus a T-shirt that says DEI. Come on now. So
Yeah.
just this whole stance that we are trying to get rid of DEI. Jay and I were talking. This is troubling because it was obviously brought about because of a need. So
Yeah.
there were issues, even affirmative action. There were issues where people were not being given a shot.
Yeah.
It was about you putting me in the room to show you I am worth it because you didn't think I was, right? And so this whole notion that DEI means that you're lesser than, like he and I are just talking, and we were like, man, you can't just go into a university, you can't just go into a job and be like, hey, I want this job. You see this? Yeah, baby, check it off. That's not how it works. That's never how it's been.
Yeah.
You have to have the resume too. So I go ahead. Dave.
No, I mean, one thing she said, so I mean, we got people that post things like, yeah, I got a 30 on the ACT and I got looked over by a Black woman or a Black man that got a 29, right? As if that's the only reason you got looked over. Like,
Mhm.
come on, y'all, let's have a full conversation. Just score ain't everything. We talking about a 1 point difference. But what about her resume versus your resume? She might have got 1 point less, but she might have played every single sport, was instrumental into our community involvement. You know, it's so many other things that we try to make it like, yo, you was better in one thing. Listen.
And that's even taking it on tangibles because one thing that Jay and I can absolutely admit that a lot of people don't want to admit is the circumstances that got that student that 28 are a
Yeah,
lot more difficult than the circumstances that helped you to get a 29. When we
that's
talk
correct.
about the ways that we are, even when we bring up these voucher programs, one of the big issues that we have right now in Ohio is that our governor, same governor we were just talking about that loves us as educators, is cutting 103.24 something million dollars from the budget for public schools and upping the amount being given to voucher programs
The
to
500
100
million.
million. Yeah. And
500 million.
a report just recently came out that showed that there was a huge influx of voucher use. Like all these vouchers are being used. And then they're looking at the private schools and their numbers aren't really changing that much. Why? Because 90% of the kids who are getting these vouchers are kids who are not low income, kids who are already attending these schools, kids who already had it set up where their parents could afford the school, could afford the tutors, could afford the extracurricular programs, the best equipment, the best instruments for band, the best SAT prep, ACT prep. All of these are factors, and you are supposed to put this kid
Yeah,
against a kid that didn't have access to any of this.
come on now.
My 28, I'm sorry, my 28 is blowing your 29 out of the water in
Yeah,
most cases.
100%. Yeah.
And so that's one of those like things that we can't even tangibly put on a resume. Like I grew up with neither one of my parents having an education. I know right now there's some people out there like, well, I did too, and I'm not Black. Bet, but look at the statistics.
Come on now.
The
I
odds were,
mean,
come on, data man.
You know, I was going there. Listen, what she just said is something I want to touch on because let's go into facts, right? Like I'm in Dayton, Ohio, which is Southwest Ohio. A very diverse community. Kind of low socioeconomics in certain areas, higher socioeconomics in others. However, Dayton is one of the largest cities of the Montgomery County. Hear me out. One of the largest cities in Montgomery County. We have Kettering, Centerville, things of that nature. These are more affluent areas. So let's talk about this voucher thing, right? So people don't get why there's an upset or an uproar dealing with the voucher system. First of all, if you're a teacher, you're a fool if you don't think this is a problem. Because if people continue to take their kids out of public school to put them into these private institutions, why are they going to start needing you, right?
Well, they
So
don't, because that is
yeah,
the
I mean,
funding
pretty
that would
much, yeah.
normally go to your school is
That's
now being
correct.
taken out of your school, going to that school where there's no oversight, which means that you start losing teachers in the public schools. Your class sizes increase. But
For
go ahead,
sure.
sorry.
So now she passed me the baton to go give you data. So I'm gonna give you some data on the Montgomery County area, right? I'm gonna give you some affluent school districts, right? So one of the top school districts in our area, let's say, is Centerville. It's not the top. Oakwood is probably the top in Montgomery, and not probably, it is the top but let's go Centerville. Centerville probably has and I'm just throwing out some numbers, probably a 6-figure average household income. And in Centerville, I'm looking at the data. I'm going straight data. I pulled this up. This came to us. Centerville Public School, what are they using for vouchers? Cityville City Schools, I'm sorry. It says low income qualified, 77 students. That's only 8% of who's using it. 851% are not low income qualified. I'll say that again. 77, 8%, those are the people that struggle to make ends meet, are using the voucher program. Whereas 851, which is 92%, not low income, are using these voucher systems. So the reason this sounds foolish to me is I take myself out of Dayton. I live in Dayton. I'm a Dayton kid. I grew up here, went to school here, public school, all of that. Went to school in North Carolina, came back. I moved my kid to Centerville because it's a great community. It's safe. This is what we say. It's safe. Education is great. This, that, and the third. But I'm using your voucher system to put my kid in a better school. I'm in a better educational system. It's not like Dayton, but let me give you what Dayton numbers are. Much bigger city. Let's go. Here go Dayton. I'm sorry, I should have probably pulled this up earlier. She kind of threw the data out there. And I was like, you know what? I need to give y'all some data. This is Dayton's number. Low income qualified, 37. It was 77 low income from Centerville. I want y'all to remember these numbers. So 37 in the city of Dayton, which is a much bigger city, probably 3 times the size, if not more, the size of Centerville. But for those not low income qualified, how much you think it was? It was 851 in Centerville. How much do you think is using it in Dayton? 10%. 84. 84, not low income. So we're talking about less than 100 we talking about? 80, no, I'm sorry, 84 and 37. So we're a little bit over. I said 84, 37. My math is not mathing too well. What am I, 121, I think? Am I 121?
You know I'm not about to check you.
121, I think so. Hey, fact check me. She'll put the numbers on the screen, do all that digital stuff. But this is what I'm saying. One thing about the voucher program, I'm gonna say this, and I've used it. I've had a son go to private school because he needed it, and I lived in Dayton. Now, guess what? My other 2 kids go to public school. I would have kept them in public school. However, he needed a better education. But I live in an area where we don't have many schools for him. The better school in Dayton, Ohio is Stiver School of the Arts. My son is not an arts kid. Guess what? He can't go there. My daughter is a dancer, and I would have loved to have sent her to Alter, and I would have paid for any of my kids to go to Alter High School. However, my daughter's dancing, she was 2. They have a great program. But anywho, when this system came about, it was for those failing school districts. Correct, Daneé? Wasn't that what they said? Hey, listen, we want those kids that are in failing school
I
districts
think it started in Cleveland.
to have the opportunity to get a better education. But when we do those things, guess what, y'all? Most of the people that in these failing school districts struggle with transportation. So when you have a voucher system, if a school ain't close by, what do you expect them to do? And now let's even go further. This is for those non-Black people. Let's talk about white people in rural communities.
Oh yeah, there's no options really. So
I mean,
the voucher program completely does not help to seal that equity gap.
I mean, if you live in the middle of nowhere, how close are you to a private school? I mean, let's talk about those that all the way far out as Minster, Ohio, because I worked with someone in that area who gave me this perspective. And I was like, you know what, man, that's a great point, because these are things I can't think of because I got my own views because of where I live. But who is this helping? In the grand scheme of it all, who does the voucher system help and who does it hurt?
And even then, Jay, like even with you using the program, we are teachers. Like we understand the system. We know how to look into the information about a school district. We know how to look
Yeah.
at scores. We know to look at demographics. I know for me personally, when I was choosing the school that I wanted my son to go to, I was really big on the special ed department and what they had, because in my head, it was like, if you do special ed right, then you do everything right.
Yeah.
But we're teachers. The majority of our parents, especially when you talk about the parents who need it the most, who are definitely lagging on that end of getting an equitable, high achieving education for their students, a lot of them don't even have that type of knowledge. And so when you talk about the voucher programs, when you talk about dismantling the US Department of Education, when you talk about getting rid of DEI programs, there are so many parents who are left in the fog of this tornado of just terms, and they don't actually know how to advocate for their kids, how to find the resources that their kids need. They can't get the supports that their kids could have to stay
Right.
competitive with these students who are getting these other resources.
Yeah.
Even speaking of special ed and talking of those needs, like when you go to these schools that are private or charter schools, there's no oversight. There's not even financial oversight in place at this point. Like we don't really know how they're spending this money, and there's nothing that says they have to show us.
Correct.
But on top of that, we also don't have access to the admissions procedures. We don't have access to how they let students go, because guess what? You can let that kid in, take the money, and then say your kid no longer can stay here, right?
Yeah.
The services that are being provided. In my own experience, I taught at a charter school. I did a whole year as a science teacher. And y'all just heard me say, I don't know nothing about math. I'm not great at science.
You ain't
A
told me
whole
that.
year. I taught science. Yes, I taught 5th through 8th grade science at a charter school,
What?
which, again, not my area, not a strong suit at all. I'm a good teacher, though. So I'm going to rise to any occasion. Listen, I'm going to stand on that. I'm a good
I
teacher.
hear that.
So I'm going to rise to the occasion. I'm going to do a good job. But I know everybody's not me. Like, we're not even going to sit up here and lie and say that everybody's me. So in these schools where you don't have to have training, where you can be an English teacher out of, or not even a teacher at all, and come in and teach math, you expect those people to have a high standard for your student who has special needs, for your student who needs special services, accommodations, expectations. There's no legal obligation there, because there's no, like, you could just be a kid that graduated from, I don't know, what's something made up, and now
You
you just
know
get
what I
to
mean?
teach.
That one school in Columbus, y'all had that Sycamore. Was it Bishop Sycamore? You know what I'm saying? Graduate from Bishop Sycamore. Y'all ain't see that on ESPN, the whole football scandal. Just a whole made up school though, and when you have districts that do this because of the shortage of teachers, you are putting your kid in harm's way. And as a science, as a real science teacher, Daneé did teach it, but I'm saying real because this is what my background is, my true license. Um, and I
You
still
like you
tell her
like a scientist that turned science teacher. You like
here,
Mr. Science Teacher
here we
qualified.
go. You know what I'm saying? Nah, and I tell everyone this: plants, flowers, they can grow in any environment. This is how I felt about my oldest son. My oldest son is a great kid. I mean, shout out, hey Chase, you on Dean's List, do your thing, man. But I knew he needed a great environment to be a part of. I mean, so I spoke with the football coach at that institution or at that school. I'm sorry. I talked to the principal. She was an amazing woman. Like I to this day still support those kids, support that community because they poured into my son. But I also knew the qualifications and the expectations. This is where I look at everything for me. I look at what's the overall expectation. I don't want to put my kid in a school where I got to maneuver them. Hey, I don't want them to take this class. If they got to take English, they better have Miss Pinckney. I'm pulling them out. I don't want to do those things. You know what I'm saying? But we have those type of schools where that's the mindset, which is unfair to not just me, because that's extra work I got to do. You know what I'm saying? It's like, look, I want my kid to be prepared for college, to pick his classes and all that good stuff. So, I mean, this whole DI thing or diversity, equity, inclusion, I'm going to say it because she wants me to say it. I'm going to listen to Miss Pinckney today. But with diversity, equity, and inclusion, don't make that face.
I didn't know what you were
Um,
talking about.
I said DI at first.
Yeah,
And
oh,
then I
no,
was
no,
like,
no.
let me
I
make
mean,
sure
we're good.
let me make sure I
Shorten our.
specifically, but I specifically will say diversity, equity, inclusion because with this type of thing or this mandate. First of all, let me tell y'all this, all y'all parents that's not aware, if your kid is on an IEP 504 and they may not receive the things you want them to do, it's a possibility you ain't got a fight on your hands anymore.
Mhm.
That fight changes.
And we're being promised that all of this stuff will be allocated elsewhere, but that's a hypothetical. And I mean, even with our governor, DeWine, his big statement is the dismantling of the U.S. Department of Education is good because it allows states to have more control. And I have to add in of funding because I want to be very clear. If you haven't already heard this, states already have control of the curriculum. We already have the decision at the state level to decide what curriculum is being approved. We already have the decision on what to use as far as our standards, all of that, right? Am I saying that there's some sketchy stuff going on as far as that? Yeah, I mean, you can talk about the Common Core, you can talk about how that is magically our state standards, but that's a whole other conversation. Don't get me wrong. Everything can get a little bit of criticism, but he's saying that the funding is the issue. We can now take control of this federal funding. The problem with that is we already see what you do with the funding. We already
Correct.
see it. You're planning to take this funding out of the pockets, the desk of kids who need it the most, the teachers who don't get to deny any of those students who come into their doors, the kids who are experiencing homelessness, the kids who are English language learners, the kids who maybe are right now not legally in this country, right? Guess what? Those are our kids. We have to take them all in, and we are expected to give them all the same quality education. But you, with your great use of funding, is deciding that you're just going to give state money, the money that we all pay taxes, we pay the taxes, to the kids who are already getting everything they need to be successful. And there's definitely some part of the population that's okay with this, right? There's a part of the population that says we'd rather have our certain groups of people not be intelligent, not be educated, right?
Yeah.
But the majority of us are not those people. And for whatever reason, so many of us proletariat class people are buying into this elitism idea of what that impacts you. Brokey, it impacts you. The fact that you don't want to see like when I think about diversity, there was somebody that brought this up, even talking about neurodivergent learners, right? If you put a bunch of people who all think the exact same way, no diversity, in a room with a problem and they can't solve it, that problem is not going to get solved.
It's not.
What solves the problem? Diversity.
Yeah.
When you bring in someone who thinks differently, whether it's because they are actually a neurodivergent thinker or because they've had different experiences due to their culture, their ethnicity, their race, their experiences as a woman, as a man, as a trans, LGBT, whatever it is, diversity brings about solutions that otherwise would not be found through old white men. And at the end of the day, the big issue here, the big attack on DEI is white supremacy. It's white supremacy dying. Please don't kill us. It's like you sprayed it with some roach spray and it just doesn't want to go. And then you just have a bunch of people who don't see how they are benefiting from the fight of Black people, of people of color, to get equality and equity for people. But that's a whole other thing.
I mean, she giving a great spiel, man. I mean, I wish y'all would really take in some of this because a lot of you all will listen and think that this is just two Black people upset. And I'm gonna tell you this, it takes a lot for me to become upset. I'm not upset by it. I just know this. I'm in a felon school district. I've been in a felon school district. I've had state support at this felon school district since I've been in the district, and we still felon. So when we say, hey, we're gonna control with the state, we ain't control the small stuff. Listen, let's keep it real with y'all, man.
And
listen.
you can't ever fix anything by taking away money.
Come on, man. I want y'all to tell
taking
me
away equity, like that has never fixed the problem.
Let me talk to y'all. Y'all might be a sports fan, some type of fan of some show, cooking show, whatever. When things are bad, right? And it continues to be bad, don't y'all want to change? Like, should there be some type of change that happens? Because again, I can tell y'all my school district was 608 out of 608 at one point in time. There's only 607 school districts now in the state of Ohio. So guess what? We're now 604. So we kind of incrementally went up three districts years. I mean, and the sad thing is this, we got state support. And I'm not knocking state support because I can't say you're not doing enough. I can't, but I'm like, where are checks and balances on what's going on? Like, where are those questions that's being asked of, hey, y'all in East Cleveland, what the heck are y'all doing over there? Y'all need to be supporting them to increase, you know what I'm saying, academics, And again, I just want to know what's the differences. I mean, we don't, I mean, every state support person I've had, I will be honest, and this is no knock to any white female in education, but they've all been white females in a majority Black district. So things that work in certain districts are not. I mean, we don't have just a magic paintbrush that works across the board. Like Daneé will tell me something that works in her school that may not work in my school, and vice versa. Hey, have you tried this? And you like, Stone, that ain't gonna work over here, and that's okay. I just really am upset. I'm just upset because it's like, matter of fact, take that aback. I'm not upset. I knew it was coming. Like, let's be real. Can we finally be real?
But that's the truth. Like, I think a lot of people, I've seen this all over social media. A lot of people are expecting us to be upset. And like, don't get me wrong, there are absolutely moments where it's frustrating, where you are just like, why are we going back so far? But it is an expectation. This is kind of what we talked about in that very first episode. We have certain expectations as being Black people.
Yeah.
But you had mentioned something about change and people needing change, right? And we expect change if things are not going the way that they should go. And the problem is, change is hard. Like, actual change to really, truly want to fix the systems is difficult. And then you'd have to even go back 2 seconds on what I just said to really fix the system. Do we even really want to fix the system? They don't. The system is working perfectly the way they want it to, right? So that's why you're not going to see that change. What people, though, the everyday layman wants is a scapegoat. They want a scapegoat. They don't want change. They want a scapegoat. It's the same way that they did it in Nazi Germany, right? You just want somebody to blame. We are in a depression. Who can we blame? Let's blame the Jews, right? Right now, Black women are the most educated group of people anywhere, right? We want a scapegoat because they've just been getting by, right? Why are we not being successful? It's because of DEI. It's so easy to just throw off your problems on somebody else. Even when you talk about education, it's so easy to just make teachers the scapegoat, right?
Yeah.
And we have an episode where we're going to talk about like how there are just so many other pieces in that, including families. Like, it's so easy because every family, mostly has kids that have gone through the system or they have gone through the system themselves. You can blame the person that is a constant in the system, the teacher, right? But it's way deeper than that. I know I'm doing it to be honest thing.
No, she hates when I talk on my hands, and I'm working on that now.
I talk with my hands too. So Jay does this thing where he grandfathers me. Please. I can't do it. I can't do it. You can do it better than me.
Nah, I ain't doing it.
Look, no, it's
I done kept my hands down.
Other than when you really got to your speech, you did one of these. You put up your shirt.
I mean, I had to roll up. It's getting warm in here.
My suits.
I want you all to know, all our listeners, I appreciate you listening. But I really want to know, how do you all feel? Because it's not just enough for Daneé and I to have these conversations in silos, right? That's one issue that I think has been the struggle in education. We feel a certain way and we feel uncomfortable talking to our colleagues, which is sad, right? Because
and I mean, you are in a district where you have colleagues who look like you and you might have the opportunity. I don't always have that. Thankfully, I have some people that I can like vent my frustrations to. But you know what I think would help, Jay? Us having conversations as people who non-people like us do respect about how diversity, equity, and inclusion has impacted our lives.
Let me tell y'all the real though. I don't mean to cut you off, Daneé, but I want you to know this. Yes, I'm in a district where it is my majority Black, but it is majority white teachers in the district.
Oh yeah.
So I want you to know this. They feel, some of them feel comfortable coming to me, and some have already told me how they feel. And I actually love it because when you can hear white America's views and it's uncanny, like I feel like they're coming in on eggshells. Like, if I say this might upset them. But I want everyone I work with, I want them to feel comfortable with me. I'm not an angry person. Listen, I mean, I try to tear down those stereotypes that they give you about, he's a big Black guy. You may be angry, guys. Be careful what you say to him. I'm pretty decent sized guy, but if you have a great opinion, I can listen. I can hear you out. Daneé and I have gotten along because though I may not agree with her opinion, I understand where she's coming from. And that doesn't matter if Daneé was a white woman, a white male. None of those things matter when what you're coming from comes from something you may have read, may have heard. Sometimes some facts can be hidden in some truth. I mean, some facts can be hidden in some lies as well. You know, this is how we kind of have gotten through with quote unquote conspiracies and things of that nature. So we have to learn to have these conversations, y'all. Education right now is suffering through this. I
Yeah.
mean, to hear that Department of Education is being dismantled, right? When things could have been done better. I don't, how do you feel about county versus city districts? How you feel about county versus city?
I don't have any feelings on that. I'm sorry.
Dang. I hate when I talk to
So I
Daneé.
wanted to go.
I gotta talk to you about stuff beforehand. I
But
realize.
yeah, I wanted to go into just in having those honest conversations with people, is just how empowering it's been for me to like tell my white coworkers, white friends, white church friends,
Yeah.
just about my experiences with diversity, equity, inclusion, because I'm someone where my dad grew up Alwyn, South Carolina, freed slave land that they pretty much said, we don't want it, it's swampland, you take it. I remember being at my grandmama's house, her sweeping the dirt floor. They had 8 people inside like a 1-room house. Like I'm talking rough, right? My mother, same thing. Single mom, 5 kids, Youngstown, Ohio. Grandmother dropped out of school at 14. Like this is my parents' background. My mom got her degree from Fayetteville State University when I was 7 or 8 years old. My dad never did.
Fayetteville, that's CIAA, guys.
Yeah. But I say all that to say, my parents didn't have money for me to go to college. Like my dad joined the military when he was 17. Like we were eating wish sandwiches as kids, right? But what got me into school was a scholarship for minority students. And it was an academic scholarship, meaning I had to earn it. Meaning I had to have the grades, the resume, the extracurriculars, the involvement. Like, that all was there.
Nope. All you had to do was be black, Daneé, to get it. That's what
I know, right? Like that's it. And it's crazy because I've had someone say things to me before, like, it's too bad that my kid is a white man. He'll never be able to get in college. If only he was a black woman. It's like, baby, that's not how it works. Like,
it's ridiculous, right?
So I say that to say no one that knows me would sit in a place with me and say, you don't deserve it, right? It's easy to look at Kamala Harris and say, she's a DEI hire because you don't know her and you refuse to look at her resume and see how completely stupid you sound. But as someone that you know personally, and like Jay said, those conversations, that human to human contact is so important. You would never say to my face that you don't think I deserve the credit that I have gotten. You would never say to my face, you don't deserve to be the Ohio Teacher of the Year. You're a DEI selection. You wouldn't, because you know my ethic. But I'm telling you that diversity, equity, inclusion has helped me to be the person that I am, has given me this platform, has helped me to be someone that can impact the world in the way that I have. Don't sleep on it.
That was a wonderful soliloquy, I must say. I truly love you coming with such fire and brimstone, but we have less than a minute. So
that was not fire and brimstone.
You should have seen yourself.
You've been out of church too long. That was not.
I want you to see how you gave that message. We got probably 10 seconds, so I'm going to say this. Thank you guys for listening.
53.
It say less than a minute on mine.
Oh, you about to get kicked out. All right. Do you anything last thoughts?
Man, I like these conversations. We got to keep doing this. But hey, tune in. We got some fire coming.
But not fire and brimstone.
Educated Instigators out.